They want to make a deal. The reason they want to make a deal is they have been just beat to shit.
We also don't fight with stupid rules of engagement. We untie the hands of our warfighters to intimidate, demoralize, hunt, and kill the enemies of our country.
Those are the words of a potential war criminal.
One of the most significant shifts in the Iran war narrative isn't coming from politicians. It's coming from military leaders themselves. A retired US Major General has now publicly suggested that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's rhetoric and actions could amount to war crimes.
In other words, to our enemies, F-A-F-O.
Those are the words of a potential war criminal. Right there. And that is not the advice and counsel and direction that any Secretary of Defense should be providing our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. It puts them actually in greater danger. The Secretary of Defense is a disgraced major that was kicked out of the DC National Guard. He has no qualifications whatsoever to be the Secretary of Defense other than his extreme loyalty to the president. Again, those are the words of a potential war criminal.
A striking accusation coming from someone who spent an entire career inside the very system that the bromander here is overseeing.
We're here to win, and we're full speed ahead. So, Steve, we appreciate your efforts.
Hegseth has made it no secret his intentions since taking over the Department of War. Hegseth has repeatedly emphasized maximum lethality and dismissed traditional rules of engagement, signaling a shift away from constraints that have governed US military operations in the past. Legal experts have warned that his rhetoric and statements suggesting no restraint in combat, could cross into territory explicitly prohibited under international law, especially when followed up with action like, say, cutting a department in the Pentagon whose sole job was to literally help prevent civilian casualty.
The argument is that I, a couple years ago, worked alongside my colleagues to pass into law something called the Civilian Protection Center. This is something that's at the Department of Defense, at the Pentagon, something that has personnel who are focused on this effort of ensuring protection of civilians, of reducing the risks that we see unfold here. The problem, though, is Secretary Hegseth decided to gut this office last year, has dramatically reduced down the staff, not implementing the budget that is necessary. Again, this was a bipartisan piece of legislation passed into law that I helped draft. Because of this, I worked at the National Security Council. I've been there for targeting packages for a president to approve. This fault lies directly on President Trump and Secretary Hegseth. They are clearly the ones that gave the orders in terms of how they should go about the risk analysis. And without this type of office, it shows just how much this administration has deprioritized the protection of civilians. And now we find ourselves facing one of the worst losses of life of civilians at the hands of Americans in decades.
And it appears the former Major General in the US Army has taken issue with Hegseth's rhetoric and the administration as a whole. And what makes this moment more serious is that it isn't the first time that concerns like this have surfaced. We've already seen military leaders warning about escalation risks with Iran. Countless reports suggested that General Kane had warned Trump on what could happen, especially in the Strait of Hormuz, but was subsequently ignored.
Thank you. You were talking about Iran a couple times today and what they did after Epic Fury began. You said they hit Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait. Nobody expected that. We were shocked. Are you surprised that nobody briefed you ahead of time that might be their retaliation?
Nobody, no. The greatest experts, nobody thought they were going to hit. They were, I wouldn't say friendly countries. They were like neutral. They lived with them for years. Peter, they were going to take over the Middle East. They were going to knock out Israel with their nuclear weapon. But after we knocked out their nuclear potential weapon, they started building missiles, thousands and thousands of missiles. And they were going to do it with missiles while they developed. These are sick people. While they developed nuclear, somehow they were going to start at a different site because that site was, you saw the site, the mountain. They were going to go into a certain area, which we know exactly where it is, and they were going to do that. And
There were also internal objections to dismantling civilian protection safeguards, which I had mentioned earlier, a decision that came under even more scrutiny after the airstrike targeting a school in Iran that killed hundreds, including school children.
One of the questions, Jen, in that news conference was about the strike on the girls' school that's next to a base in Iran, and it was a Tomahawk missile. The president saying Tomahawks are used by other countries, but an investigation is ongoing. What do we know about where that stands?
Well, that was a bit surprising to me because basically the U.S. has Tomahawks. Tomahawks have to be fired from either submarines or from warships. The Brits and the Australians have Tomahawks, but they're not part of this conflict. And then you also have the Japanese who are in a testing phase. So it seems highly unlikely that it would be anyone's Tomahawk other than a U.S. Tomahawk that hit that school. And I think the president knows that. He just knows that this is certainly a mistake, a big mistake, and it's being investigated, but he's trying to sort of muddy the waters by talking about the Tomahawks.
Yeah, they were.
And of course, intelligence officials resigning over how the war was justified. I mean, even members of Congress, including Republicans, have raised serious concerns that certain actions or orders could potentially constitute to war crimes if confirmed, akin to what was discussed during Trump's maritime attacks targeting alleged drug boats.
Number one, there is no fentanyl made in Venezuela. Not just a little bit, there's none being made in Venezuela. These are outboard boats that, in order for them to get to Miami, would have to stop and refuel 20 times. They're in all likely going to Trinidad and Tobago, which is an island right off of the coast of Venezuela. So there's a lot of reasons to be worried about this. But number one is the broader principle of when can you kill people indiscriminately? When you're at war. That's why when we declare war, it's supposed to be done by Congress. It's supposed to be thoughtful. It's supposed to be debated. And we're not supposed to do it willy-nilly. And then when you have war, you just kill people in the war zone. And even then there are rules of engagement. But interdicting drugs has always been a criminal activity and a criminal anti-crime sort of activity where we don't just summarily execute people. We actually present evidence and convict them.
Now those concerns are being echoed by retired senior military leadership. I mean, for the Trump administration, this creates a different kind of challenge, right? Because criticism from political opponents can just be dismissed. Criticism from the media can be spun as fake news. But from military leadership, as the majority of Americans already disapprove of the ongoing conflict, that only casts more doubt on the mission itself. A mission that seems to change every 5 minutes depending on who in the administration is talking about it.
What is happening? Just like, listen, Donald Trump himself and Pete Hegseth and top officials with the administration have told us completely backwards explanations for this multiple times. We have heard it will be a few days. Actually, it will take months. No boots on the ground. Also, maybe a draft, and we're sending thousands of troops to the region.
Did you hear about a draft?
Yeah.
I didn't.
Well, look, Caroline. Yeah, well, you were on vacation. I'm glad you got some color.
I wasn't dodging the. Not
like our president. We already won. Also, give us $200 billion. We fight with bombs. Also, let's give $14 billion in oil sanctions relief. We're going to end the regime. They'll never get a nuke. Just kidding. Those aren't our goals anymore.
Because while the American people are forking out more money for gas at home while the cost of living continues to skyrocket, we're not exactly told why all this has taken place.
And they're affected. The amazing thing is we don't need the Hormuz Strait. We don't need it. We don't need it at all. We have so much oil. Our country is not affected by this.
Along Iran's southern coast, the Strait of Hormuz is at a virtual standstill due to the threat of attacks. That has led to a nearly 50-cent surge in U.S. gas prices in just the past week. And drivers are starting to take notice.
It was quite a bit higher than what I was expecting. It's crazy high.
Between my husband's truck and my car, we're well over $300 a month in gas.
At work, I make around like $18 an hour, and that's not even a full tank. It's like 2 hours at work is one tank. All of my money has been going to gas.
Today was kind of a big sticker shock.
It's getting tougher and tougher to live.
In fact, if you were to ask GOP officials, they're more inclined to tell you to just go ahead and skip one trip to Starbucks a week in order to fund patriotic duties for America than they are to actually answer questions to why we are engaging in yet another conflict in the Middle East.
What are some of the big issues on the minds of voters there in Minnesota? Well, yeah, look, we've all been told that the word affordability is key, and it is. And right now, I would say, look, we had gas prices at a 5-year low, and we were really enjoying watching that. And now here we are in a conflict in the Middle East, which is bringing gas prices up again. I know it's frustrating, and I know it's hard for people. What I would say to them is we've lost some service members over there who have put their lives on the line to protect us, to protect the region, protect America's friends in the region. We can all, it used to be during the past wars, especially World War II, Americans got behind our servicemen and women, and we did little things to show our support for them. We collected metal, we recycled stuff, aluminum, so that we could, help in the war effort. I think right now, at least just kind of keeping a stiff upper lip. Maybe you take one less trip to Starbucks, and so that gas goes a little further until this thing is over and these gas prices come back down again. Let's just try to be patriots about this. Whether you agree with it or not, we're there, and we've got to support our men and women in uniform. That's a big one.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.